This podcast is a Radio Mike original production. Head to radiomike.com.au to find out more. Hey guys, Mike here. Welcome to Mike Talks, the sometimes bonus edition of my podcast that I sometimes do when I sometimes have time. At the moment, I do have a bit of time, so I've been working on this one for a little while, and usually these used to come out on Fridays if you're a long-time listener. This one's out on a Monday. Crazy, I know. Get used to it. I'm putting them out whenever I want. No, but these will just come out whenever they can. Maybe I'll aim for Mondays. And Blake Pavey is my guest this week. I've actually been trying to get Blake to jump on this show for a while, but it hasn't lined up. But today we were both free, so we sat down for about 45 minutes to have a chat with me. If you don't know Blake, he is a guy who got really big on TikTok, as we talk about in this a lot. Over 800,000 followers on TikTok, doing a bunch of character work and impressions of like classic Aussie family members. Possibly his best known character is his Aussie dad kind of character. Go and check him out. He's Blake Pavey on Instagram. He's now doing a bunch of stand-up comedy, including opening for Luke Kidgel, friend of the show, who has also done an episode of Mike Talks, on his Cheers to That tour. So go and grab tickets to that wherever you are in the world. Well, it's only in Australia, so if you're somewhere else in the world, you probably can't go. But go and see Luke and see Blake opening for Luke as well. This was a really cool chat. Blake's a really young guy, but I wanted to chat to him because I reckon he's got a huge future in the Australian comedy and performance kind of industry. And he also had some goals that I didn't really know about that we get to at the end here. This is the first Mike Talks for a while. It's really good to do them again. And if you have suggestions for guests that you'd like to get on, let me know. But more importantly, let them know so they know the show exists. If you like this show, Patreon.com/Radio Mike, as little as $1 a month can really go a long way, and you get a couple bonus podcasts every week on there as well. And if you want to see more of my content, you can go to Radio Mike on YouTube, check out some of my pop culture stuff on there. As well as that, you can check out my Harry Potter fan fiction podcast, Harry Potter and the Boys, currently in its second season. But guys, without further ado, let's go over to my chat with Blake Pavey. Alright, welcome to Mike Talks, the bonus edition of my podcast, where I talk to cool people, well, people that I think are cool. They're not objectively cool, but I think they're cool. Today, my guest, armed with a Dare iced coffee, I believe, is Blake Pavey, comedian. Oh, is it a nice iced espresso, is it?
Yeah, double espresso we're going with today. Blake
Pavey, stand-up comedian and TikTok extraordinaire. Do you like being called that?
Nah.
No.
Nah, it's all right.
So, but you have an association with, because your kind of entire career kicked off through TikTok, didn't it?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, that was late 2019 when I was in like year 11. That's when I started. Yeah. But I was one of those dudes who I hated TikTok, and it took me 6 months for my mates to convince me to download it. And then they were pissed when I finally started making videos and they actually blew up.
Yeah, right. And so were you annoyed that a platform you hate gave you the platform that you have now, essentially, to do what you do?
Nah, it's not too bad. Nah, I was I think once I started getting the app and using it a bit more, that's when I started to enjoy it. And then, I'll usually just make videos and just either send them to my mates. I wouldn't really post them. And then sort of just one random one I just ended up posting, and that was the first sort of dad one that I did. And then, it's just from there. But no, it took me a while to actually get used to it and start enjoying it.
Yeah, cool. So I discovered your stuff, I'm pretty sure, just through it coming up on my TikTok and Instagram and stuff. And I immediately saw you do a lot of character work, particularly that dad character you just brought up. But now you're kind of moving into more traditional stand-up comedy, but you're still doing your sketch stuff. Do you want to walk me through, just at the top, what made you start doing these videos of the Aussie dad and different Australian family-based characters? Like what was the genesis of that?
I don't know. I think it just came from just like living those experiences. Like the first one that actually blew up was just like an impression of me doing like a dad running into his mate at the pub. And that was just sort of like based off like, 10 years of like going to the local golf club and watching dad run into his mate. So I kind of just pulled out my camera one day and then just did it. And I wasn't going to post it. I literally just went out to the lounge room, showed mum. She thought it was funny. And then I just randomly posted it. And then I had to go to work. And then, so I didn't have my phone on me for a couple of hours. And then when I got back, I was just flooded with, all these comments. And then from there, people just kept telling me to do it. And then after that, that's how I just started bringing in, other characters like Tiff and Jess and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it sort of just like naturally evolved, I think.
Yeah. And so do you have sisters as well? Because the Tiff and Jess characters are they're kind of like your Jamae sort of, teenage girl kind of vibes. Are they based on your real sisters?
No, well, I've got two siblings. I've just got an older sister, and then I've got just an older brother as well. But he's gay, so it is like having two sisters at the best of times. But no, Tiff and Jess are based off just like girls that I went to school with, pretty much, just dialed up to 11. Pretty like I was good mates with these two twin sisters who were in my same year that I've just always grown up with. So I think they've got an inkling that it's pretty much based off them, but I'll never confirm it to them because it's not the best take on them, I don't think.
Yeah, right. Okay. So when it comes to like impressions and doing like little impressions of different characters, which is obviously what sparked you becoming so big, were you always doing that when you were at school? Were you always making fun of teachers or whoever was around and trying to do, because you do really good character work. Like you can see just from like, I think you posted a while ago on your Insta press shots you got made up of you in character as all of your characters. And you can kind of see how in the characters you are. Like, these characters and how they behave and how they look. And it's just so obvious that you're inside them. So is that something that's come natural to you?
I think so. I was pretty quiet at school until about year 9, 10 sort of time. But before that, I'd sort of just do it for my parents and around family and around my siblings and all that sort of stuff. So I guess that's where it sort of initially came from. But at the same time, I never really thought it was going to be something that I'd actually like do for a living, I guess. But it just came from, again, mucking around with family and all that sort of stuff. Cause I've got a pretty like funny family. They got a good sense of humor. So it's always a good gauge for me to see what is actually funny and what's not funny. So I've had good like boot camp, I guess.
Yeah, cool. How many TikTok followers do you have now? You've nearly got 1 million, surely.
Yeah, we I think it's just over like 800,000 now. I think we've just ticked over that. Which is weird.
What was the point where you're just making these videos for your friend and then suddenly they're getting millions of views on TikTok and you're like, random people you don't know are starting to find you and follow you? What was the point where you're like, oh shit, this is a bit out of control?
Yeah, it was weird. Well, I think in the first like week or so after I posted those first couple of dad videos, it was when like it was so easy to get, followers and all that sort of stuff, because there wasn't many Aussie creators on there at the time who did sort of like characters and all that sort of stuff. So within the first couple of weeks, I had around like 20, 25K followers, which I had at the time, like 100 followers on Instagram. So it was just like, it was so weird to even like have those numbers up, anything like associated with my name. But it was when I was driving, I sort of went through a phase where I was like sort of taking it for granted a bit. And it was like when I hit about 100K and I was driving with like my best friend from back home, and he was like, that's literally like a full MCG full of people. And then that's when I was just like, oh shit, is actually a lot of people when you think about it. And now that's how I sort of think about it. Like every 100K that ticks over, I'm just like, oh, that's 8 MCGs now or whatever it is. But yeah, that's the gauge I have for it.
So you're nearly up to 10 MCGs.
Yeah, can't wait.
Even the MCG can't fit 10 MCGs, so that's huge.
It's so weird that that's like my point of view on it, but it's the only thing that sort of makes sense to me.
And was there a point where you were like, oh, now I actually want to seriously pursue this and try and make it a thing? Because you're pretty young, you're like 20, and when I was 20, I was working at Dan Murphy's in Kew while studying media at RMIT. Like, I never would have been doing anything like what you're doing when I was 20. So what, like at the start of your career, you're already so far ahead. What was the point where you were like, yeah, I'm going to give this a shot?
I don't know. It was probably when, I don't know. I guess I've sort of just always thought of it as a bit of fun. And then just, again, it naturally progressed into not even there being a point of where I was like, oh, okay, this is now sort of a job, but it always just, I think as soon as I started getting followers and like it started reaching over, about 200, 250K, that's when I was like, oh, okay, now I could actually probably try to make something out of it. But at the same time, I still try not to think of it as much of a job, really, because, again, it takes me like 20 minutes to make a video. So I don't think I can classify it as real work just yet. But yeah.
What do you reckon, like, the challenge has been for you, or if there is a challenge, of now trying to move into actually doing stand-up comedy? And I saw you were at Comics Lounge, which is awesome. Congratulations. That's awesome to see. As someone who has been kind of following you on the sidelines for a while, it's really cool to watch the success that you've started having. Doing TikTok videos for a laugh to like, now I'm going to actually do stand-up comedy, which is probably a different trade.
It was honestly, like, I think the transition's been easier than I expected. Like, I still obviously got to get over sort of the nerves and the performance-based stuff. But in terms of like writing jokes and, like the actual like sort of craft of writing jokes, TikTok's actually been a pretty good sort of boot camp for it. Because like back when, like before they started making like 3-minute videos, back when it was just 1 minute, it really just sort of teaches you how to write a joke pretty much. So that's been sort of subconsciously a way that I've been able to sort of bring that over to the stage, which has been really good. But yeah, no, I'm loving the transition so far. So I'll just see how it goes.
Yeah, great. Growing up comedically, in my mind, I feel like there's one thing that stands out to me about your work that you might say, but inspiration wise, talk to me about the kinds of people that you watched and found funny and that kind of inspire your work. Obviously I think if you're an Aussie doing any sort of character work, you can't escape like just Chris Lilly just in any form. But like other than that, I think sort of a lot of my sort of inspirations came from like actors like Jim Carrey and Robin Williams and all that sort of stuff, because I was just obsessed with all of their movies growing up and sort of that level of sort of like characterization and impression that they did. Probably. Which Jim Carrey movies do you reckon were your favorite?
It was so weird because I used to watch a lot of his movies when I was younger, and sort of I didn't click that it was an actor. It was still when I thought it was all just real. So like my favorite movie ever was The Mask when I was a kid, while at the same time one of my favorite movies, but also scared the living shit out of me, was The Grinch. So those two were like, and then like as I grew up, I was like, oh, that's the same dude. And then that's from there, that's when I sort of started holding him as like a really sort of important inspiration, I guess, comedically. And then just like all of the stuff that Robin Williams did on stage sort of in his early days when he was, doing mainly stand up and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, probably those two have been the biggest ones so far.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say like that, because they obviously are actors, and Jim Carrey, like I love Jim Carrey. I think he's just such an overwhelmingly talented dude. He even pops up in have you seen the Sonic the Hedgehog movie at all, or is that
I haven't
beneath you?
I think I think I think I'm planning to go see it with. I've got a little niece and nephew, so I'll probably have to end up putting myself through it.
He's the bad guy in that, and he's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
But I guess like the thing about Jim Carrey and Robin Williams is like they are comedians, and they both started in the world of stand-up comedy. Even like someone like Steve Martin, who was kind of almost like what Jim Carrey was 20 years earlier than Jim Carrey. Like he was all in all those comedy movies, but they were always just stand-up comics. Circling back to Chris Lilly, how old were you when Summer Heights High came out?
Oh, good question. I don't even know what year it came out. Would have been.
I think it was 2007.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, I would have been 5 in 2007, but I didn't see it till.
Really?
Yeah, so I didn't see it till probably I was about 11 or 12, I don't think. Yeah, that's when everyone sort of started getting into it. But yeah, and then his other series like Angry Boys and stuff, that's sort of that was how I started to really love him. Like, because that came out when I was sort of getting to that age where I started to like understand it and all that sort of stuff. And then that sort of led me into Summer Heights High from there. But yeah.
Interesting. Okay, because I was in year 7 when Summer Heights High was airing. So I was one of the year 7s at school at the time. And like the whole fuck year 7s thing was such a thing at my school. So you felt so vulnerable. Because when I saw you for the first time, I was like, oh, this guy's kind of doing what Chris Lilly did. Like he's just making characters and he's really good at it. Because I think the undeniable thing with Chris Lilly, wherever you sit on it politically, is that no one could deny that he's a phenomenal actor. The way he lives and breathes all of his characters. Was there a standout? Like, you kind of remind me of Daniel and Nathan from Angry Boys, the two twins. Like, did that kind of draw you in that those were two country boys just doing life?
I don't know. I think my biggest Chris Lilly character that sort of has sort of stuck with me the whole, like throughout however long I've been watching him, was like the Gran character, like the prison Gran character. That's just like by far my favorite ever, because he just
one of his best characters.
Oh yeah, it's just like, because it's literally just people that I know that I sort of grew up with. Like it reminds me a lot of one of my mum's best friends that I've known for years. So it was always, that was the one that stuck with me for a long time.
And it is interesting because, a lot of his characters are really controversial and for different reasons. But I think that's what you've just said, I think is so important with him, is that a lot of these kind of archetypes that he's portraying are based on reality, and he's just writing characters that are real complex, nuanced people, especially someone like Gran, who I think you see the flaws in that character. Like she is such a racist and politically incorrect person, but she's also like a loving grandmother who is dying, who has Alzheimer's, you find out later in the show. And I think the complexity of that writing to me was always pretty overlooked.
I think I'm sort of on the same page, especially with like what was that Phil Olivetti, the cop who he got in the jumping castle incident or whatever it was back in the day.
Donkey Dick.
Yeah. And then, he really stuck with me as well, because it was just like, it was funny and it was a great character, but like to its core, it was sort of just like a dad just trying to be a cool dad, pretty much.
Trying to impress his kids to the max.
Yeah. And sort of his, like you could tell, like he was a very insecure person internally, and then like externally, that's when he would try to contrast it and just try to up, what he thought of himself, I guess.
Just like the arrogance of every white dude in the world. He just like thinks he just has to, he's so insecure. He has to portray himself as this amazing dude who like is good at everything. What about current inspirations? Like, what are there comedians now that you look at and you find really inspiring of your content?
I don't know. I guess content wise, just sort of like sketch comedians and all that sort of stuff, because that's what I want to lean into in terms of making videos and sort of longer stuff like that. But in terms of stand-up, I think my biggest inspiration is this comedian like Mark Maron, just this American comedian. Huge fan of him. Just the way he sort of, he doesn't really write jokes. He just sort of like writes existential thoughts, and just like he has a really good way of sort of delivering, the human experience in just a way that I haven't really seen before. So that I brought a lot of inspiration from him into sort of my writing, or I've tried to, but yeah, he's probably the biggest one.
Is your current goal for stand-up comedy to just be doing open mics and testing the waters and seeing what works and what doesn't and finding your voice? Or like, is long-term do you want to be in a comedy show for the festival? Like what do you want to do with it long-term? I'm sort of very keen to stop doing open mics as soon as I can. The comedians I know are going to hate that, but I just hate like comedian culture, like open mic comedian culture, because it's just like you go to these fucking rooms and it's just comedians hanging out trying to one up each other, and it's comedians talking about comedy like they've made it and they've just haven't. Like the amount of comedians, like I'm in this Facebook group like that, just where you get spots and all that sort of stuff. And there was this comedian in there, and he was like, "Oh, I've been doing this for 9 years now," and just like, but nobody's ever fucking heard of him. So like, and he's still doing open mics and all that sort of stuff. And I just hate small comedian culture. So I'm keen to get that side of it done and dusted. How do you do that? Like, do you just say, "Hey, I'm not doing this anymore," and book a show? Or like, what do you want to do?
Pretty much, yeah. Well, this tour with Luke, it will be a good sort of starting point to like sort of build that into my own solo show after that. So I'm going to try do sort of a new 10 minutes for every state that we go to. So then after that, I can sort of jump into my own hour pretty much straight away. But that's probably another way TikTok and content and sort of having a following has sort of let me sort of, bypass, having to do open mics and slog out those rooms for, a couple of years. Cause I think probably playing the Comics Lounge was probably a bit early, but I think, at the end of the day, it's just better to jump in the deep end. And I feel a bit guilty about it, like getting here this early, but at the same time, I think, you'd be dumb not to do it. But yeah.
How did that come up for you, the Comics Lounge spot?
That was just sort of a part of Neil Kolhatka's show that he's running there every month. Yeah. So I did that with him, and then because I've been wanting to play that room for years, a couple of years, like ever since I started, thinking about wanting to do stand up. I've sort of always seen that room as sort of a pinnacle. So to be able to do it this early was, it was just so cool. But yeah.
The tour with Luke that you mentioned is obviously Luke Kitchell, who's going on his national tour, and you're going to be opening for him at every show, which, like, as you said, is an awesome opportunity. And both Luke and Lewis are really good at, are really generous with kind of platforming new people and giving them a shot. I think they've always been really good at that. Like all of my stuff spurs from me being on their radio show 5 years ago. So I think it's awesome that Luke's doing that, and I think it's going to be awesome for you. Speaking of like what you just said, because I've heard Lewis talk about this a bit, when it comes to that idea of like bypassing the traditionally accepted route into how you do stand-up comedy in Melbourne or wherever, you mentioned like it did feel kind of weird. Is that just because there's like this social expectation of how you climb the ranks in comedy in Australia, and do you feel like you're just kind of being like, you're slip laning it a bit and coming in? Because what are your thoughts on that, I guess, first off? Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah, well, I sort of I've got another mate who does stand up as well, Anthony, who he makes videos as well. So we've been able to sort of we sort of not, we don't get a lot of flack for being like social media people, but there is definitely a
stigma.
Stigma, and there's sort of a bit of a distaste for social media people because it's not the traditional way up. But at the same time, just like, I think the traditional way up is just not the way to go anymore. So if, I'll do, whatever I can to sort of climb as fast as I can. But yeah, I don't really know what I think about it. I've sort of just taken it by ear and just seeing what happens. Because at the end of the day, like, if anyone else was in my position, they'd probably be doing the same thing. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because the point Lewis has made is that, yeah, there is this traditional way of doing it where you do your open mics and then you do some TV spots and whatnot, or whatever it is, and then you end up doing the gala and whatever. But his point is that, like, that avenue isn't the best way to do it, because if you can get a platform online of more people, a bigger platform, which is pretty much what you did, and there's like, I guess there's that perception that that's the wrong way of doing it and you're not a real comedian because you've made content online. You're not actually just, getting your flying hours up like the rest of us and waiting for your opportunity. You're pushing in. And I think that really sucks. And yeah, I definitely don't think you should feel any negative emotions about that. I think, of course, like if you've got an audience and a platform, that's awesome, and you should totally serve those people who like you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, and I think just with open mics, I just don't see the value in going to an open mic, because at the end of the day, like most times when you go to an open mic, it's just like you there with about 5 other comedians who are just waiting to go on, and that's about it. So I just don't, like, it gives you stage time. It gives you about 5 minutes a night if you want. But like at the end of the day, like I just think throwing yourself in the deep end and doing stuff in front of real crowds is probably the best way to go about things, and just like, test the waters that way. Because that's how I think I'm going to get better. And again, like going back to Luke's tour, like 15, 20 minutes of stand up in front of real crowds every night will just be the best experience. And I think I'm keen to see what the progression is from like where I am now to where I'll be in 6 months when we end the tour, just to see how much I've sort of progressed. But yeah.
It's interesting because you strike me, and the way you are outwardly, you're seem like a really confident dude, which is great. But then you mentioned before that you're getting nerves doing stand up generally. Like, are you nervous about this tour with Luke?
I don't know. I guess I haven't really had time to think about it yet. I'm always pretty good until the day of a show, and then that's when everything sort of kicks in. Like the last few shows I've done, it's that sort of died down a bit, so I think I'm getting past that. But like at the very start, if I would have to like mentally prepare for a couple of days beforehand before doing a show, I'd get that nervous. But yeah, it's just like, again, it's just something you got to push through, and once you get that first joke out there or that first laugh, that's when I usually just get over it, I guess, and just, push through to the next one. But yeah, no, I think I'll probably get nervous for, those like pre-show jitters for most shows. But at the same time, I think I'll be more nervous for the shows where I know people I know will be coming, because it's their first sort of time seeing me. Like, we're playing about 40 minutes from where I grew up in the Albury show. So yeah, that'll be just literally all of my friends, family, and others there. So that'll be probably a bit of a nerve-wracking one. Do
you reckon will your parents and siblings and everyone come to that show and see you there?
Yeah, well, we play Wagga. We start tomorrow in Wagga, so mum and dad are coming to that as well. They want to come to the first show. So yeah, it'll be good to sort of do that show, and then for them in a couple of months to come again in Albury, just to see sort of how it's progressed over time. But yeah, no, but at the same time, it's a nervous excitement, I guess.
Have you had an experience where you've bombed, or like where you've just had a shit show, and like does that shake you a little bit?
Yeah, no, I've had some shockers. Like, probably the worst one that sticks to mind is like I did this one open mic at the absolute pinnacle venue of comedy that I loved so fucking much, the Rubber Chicken. And
is that are you being sarcastic or is that true?
Yeah, so yeah, very much.
But the Rubber Chicken is like what, like a little pub in South Melbourne that does like open mic comedy. But yeah, continue.
Yeah. So so I put my name in the hat for open mic, and then the MC gets up and he starts explaining how to go about things and all that sort of stuff. And then I had a joke in my set that just relied heavily on the use of the C word.
Yeah.
And then he gets up and he's like, oh, also just a final note, if you guys swear too much in your act, then we'll kick you off stage. So I was like, oh, like, what am I going to do? And then I was like, okay, I'll go back through my notes. And if I'm not the first person called out, then I should be able to pull something else out. So he gets the first name out of the hat, and then it was just me. So the 5 minutes on stage that I did there were just trauma, and I haven't been back.
And did you do the C word joke, or did you try to do something else?
I did. I tried to sort of stumble through it, and then sort of I got about 3/4 of the way through, and then I just said, this isn't going to work. And then I literally just walked off stage. I was like, this sucks.
Were you trying to do it without saying the C word, or were you just saying it, or?
I can't remember what the exact joke was. Look, it was probably a shit joke because it was like my second gig ever. Yeah. But like, it just threw me off that they were going to kick me off stage if I told the joke, which I think is just the weirdest thing to do at an open mic, like say you can't swear. That was just mind-boggling.
In that sense, what are your thoughts on, and like you don't have to answer it, but just out of curiosity, what are your thoughts on censorship in comedy and like, I guess in inverted commas, cancel culture in comedy? Something that comes to mind is like Dave Chappelle's special, even like, I know his podcast isn't necessarily comedy, but Joe Rogan and all of these kinds of things. What are your thoughts on those issues, if you have any?
I don't know. I'm sort of like stuck in the middle. I think I get both sides of it, I guess, but like I'm sort of leaning away from the mindset of like Joe Rogan's and Dave Chappelle's and all that sort of stuff. Like I don't really think cancel culture, like especially in stand-up and all that sort of stuff and telling jokes, I don't really feel like it exists. Like Dave Chappelle got cancelled and then he sold out like 50 arenas a night for the next year. So like,
and he's still signed to Netflix. Like it's not like Netflix dropped him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I don't think that, like, I love jokes and I love comedy and all that sort of stuff, but I just think that like most comedians, like I love Ricky Gervais and I love all of those types of blokes, but I just feel like they get to a point where they talk more on stage about people getting offended over jokes than they do telling actual jokes, if that makes sense. Right. Like it becomes their whole stigma. Like
Jimmy Carr just put out a new special that was very much like that. Like I watched it. I don't know if you've seen it. It was the Netflix one, and the whole conceit of it is like, oh, I'm going to tell jokes and you might be offended, but it's just a joke. And I guess like, yeah, I know what you mean. It kind of felt like, all right, we get it. You'd be better off just make jokes. Like you don't have to give us this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm making a point about it. I get what you mean there.
Yeah, exactly. And it, who did I see? So I saw a comedian at the Arts Centre at the start of last year, I'm pretty sure it was, and he gets up on stage and he tells this pretty like offensive joke, and the crowd loved it. We all pissed ourselves laughing. But then he like went on a rant. He was like, "Don't get offended by that, guys. It's just a joke." And me and my mate were sitting there, and we were like, "We're not. We all just fucking laughed at your joke." And then he just went on this rant about like cancel culture and all that sort of stuff. Right. But I don't think it exists. I think, and I don't know. I don't want to like rant about it or anything, but I just think
it's just interesting to hear people's thoughts on it. Like I saw this great tweet, which was, cancel culture doesn't exist because Louis CK's latest special is literally called Sorry. and he's selling like sorry keychains and sorry stickers and stuff. So he's literally profiting and selling merch about him being sorry for what he did. And it's like, well, how does cancel culture exist if you can profit off it? It'd be like if it'd be like if Harvey Weinstein was selling sorry keychains, like literally.
It just I don't get it. I just don't believe the thing like that most comedians are trying to push, where it's like, oh, comedy's dead and all that sort of stuff. I just think it's like this sort of stuff is the best thing for comedy, and like more sensitive times that we're living in are sort of the best times to make these jokes because they're a bit more taboo. But I think, most people at the end of the day are very level-headed and don't care about offensive jokes. Like, I think the media just perpetuates a culture of sensitivity and just sort of political correctness that really doesn't exist, I don't think.
Yeah.
So,
I'd love to chat about TikTok. I know you kind of, at the start of this chat, I drew on TikTok a bit, and it seems like is there a part of you that's just like, oh, yeah, I don't want to be known as the TikTok guy, which I totally understand. But as a platform, I'm curious about what you think its longevity and future is, because I can see that you're trying to move a lot of your audience from TikTok to other platforms. Do you think that TikTok is here to stay for a while? Like, what are your thoughts on the platform generally?
I don't know. I guess I'm sort of, when it comes to technology, like in that aspect of things and like, predicting like what's going to stay, I'm just clueless with all of it. I think it will stick around a bit, hopefully. I think it'll definitely have its run. But it definitely feels like it's the top dog at the moment. But I think it's definitely, once Facebook sort of goes out of fashion, which it already has, kind of, I think it'll have a good long run, I think. But at the end of the day, like, I'm just trying to convert over to other stuff just to be safe and just to sort of have that, bit of extra breathing room just in case it does, get deleted. Like they always say it's gonna get deleted.
Chinese spies and shit like that.
It was like going back to like being called the TikTok guy, it's not the, like, I don't hate it. I don't love it. I don't really like it. Just, it is what it is. But I sort of, just hopefully, like, because it is still I'm still, as I'm transitioning into stand up, and trying to move more into sort of like traditional acting, which is probably what my main goal is. I think I just sort of try to sort of strip that title and not be just like the one trick pony as a TikToker. Because just like hearing the word TikToker, it sort of just brings you all these it doesn't sound good.
It's weird that it's like that, because so many people, like normal working people, are on TikTok now, and it's such a normal platform to be on now. But you're right, there still is this weird kind of devaluing when someone says I have a TikTok with a big following, and I think that's pretty dumb. Hey, you said that traditional acting is what you want to do. Is that above comedy? You'd want to be like a TV actor or a movie actor?
Probably. I think like I love doing stand up and I love all of that sort of stuff. But I think for like going back to like watching Jim Carrey and Robin Williams movies and all that sort of stuff, I think that's sort of what I'd want to do most. And just like with the little things that I've done, just like little ads here and there and like shooting sketches and all that sort of stuff, that's where I probably get the most enjoyment, just like doing more of that acting work. But again, like that's why I'm trying to sort of go into stand up, because that is such a good stepping stone. And I think like a lot of my favorite actors of all time, and I think like the best actors of all time, started in stand up because it's such a good, way of sort of leaning into that sort of stuff.
Do you reckon the characters that you do, which seem to be like a foundation of your whole kind of brand, would you see yourself, if possible, being like, hey, I'm writing this Chris Lilly style mockumentary around my characters and then going to put that to networks and trying to sell it? Like, is that the kind of show you'd want to write and work on?
Probably not to that extent, just because like I think, you know, there'd be no escaping the Chris Lilly comparisons. And I think like at the end of the day, just doing like a white Australian dude doing a show with like 5 different characters, he plays them all. Just would like it'd just be a bootleg Chris Lilly thing. But I think I'd probably do that sort of stuff on like a web series or like via sketches and all that sort of stuff. But I think like in terms of the stuff that I want to do, sort of would lean more into sort of dramedy area, because that's what I think's most effective, I think, and that's what I enjoy watching the most. So yeah, I've got it's still in early development. We're still writing it, but I'm working with these 2 like writers up in Queensland, and we're trying to write up a little series that we're going to try and get picked up and all that sort of stuff, which sort of leans into, as I said, dramedy and sort of that more, like it'll be funny, but also it'll be able to, you know, let me show off some actual acting chops and not be the funny guy all the time. So I think that's probably what I want to sort of lean into most. And if I can do that, that'd be a really sort of, that's my goal pretty much.
Oh, cool, man. I didn't know that about you. That's really interesting to hear. Because I would have thought just from watching you that it was, just doing comedy specifically is what your goal was. So that's nice little nugget. I appreciate that.
I think like sort of subconsciously, like going back to like when I was a kid, I think that's just what I've always sort of wanted to do. But again, living in the country, there's just like no way to do it. So I never really thought about it until I started making content and all that sort of stuff. But if I can do like TV, films, and like even theatre, I'd love to like, you know, delve into that world a little bit. Like I've done work experience at like Melbourne Theatre Company a couple of years ago and all that sort of stuff, and that was really, really good. So I just want to sort of delve into that sort of stuff as well, which I think it'd be, you know, fun, but also a good bit of experience. So that's the main goal at the moment, I think.
Awesome, man. Well, it's been awesome chatting. I always end with the exact same question or questions. So I'm going to put this to you. I just like to get a vibe of what people are into. So this is the last series of questions. What is one movie, TV show, album, and video game that you think, and book that you think everyone in their life should experience?
Okay. Movie, it'd be Prisoners.
Oh, yeah.
Album would be... album would be Hosier's first album, just self-titled Hosier. Yeah. That's my favourite album.
What is it about that you like?
I don't know. I just think he's the best lyricist. I just love his lyrics. He's like, because he's like, he had like a poetry background. Like he's been writing poetry all his life. So, and that's just translated to the music. Yeah. And he's just so good. I just love him. Mm. But what was the third one? Video game.
Yeah, if you're into them.
Yeah. Flappy Bird, because I think everybody just needed to experience that zeitgeist. That was just such a specific time. Like I remember being in about year 3 and I'd rock up to school and then like my mate could come up to me and they'd be like, "Did you hear people kill themselves over Flappy Bird?" And it was just such a odd time. So Flappy Bird.
Of all the people I've asked this question, I never would have thought anyone would answer what's a game everyone should play. You know, people are saying like, Skyrim and Legend of Zelda, and you're just like Flappy Bird, the iPhone app where there's one thing you can do. I know what you mean though. That was so much of a moment in time, wasn't it, Flappy Bird?
Oh, so good. So good. TV show Succession. That's the best show on television. I love that show so much.
Heard great things.
I can't wait for season 4 to come out. And then book, I'd probably go a book called Amusing Ourselves to Death by Neil Postman.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is sort of like, just like, it's sort of like a study of like, this dude, he basically predicted that we'd be so like immersed in our phones and our technology that we'd sort of, I don't know how to explain it, but you just go into it blind, and it's a really good, really good study pretty much. He,
Awesome.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Awesome, man. Hey, this has been really cool getting to know you a bit better. Do you want to plug all your stuff? So where can people find you and how do they see you live?
Yeah, sweet. Okay, so yeah, just chuck in on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram at Blake Pavey. Me and Luke Kidgel, we're going on tour. We're going around the country. So tickets and info at lukekidgel.com. And yeah, then after that, I'll start promoting my own shows. So coming along to that as well. But yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Blake Pavey. Thank you for listening, everyone. Speak to you soon. This podcast was a Radio Mike original production. Head to radiomike.com.au to check out all our other content, stay up to date at radio.mike on Instagram, and get in touch, radiomikepod@gmail.com.